Next on Unsolved Mysteries, a man confesses to murder. Later, he claims that he was forced to lie and that he's truly innocent. He has unlikely allies. A local sheriff and a state prosecutor believe him. Island residents claim that a ghostly visitor protects their homes from hurricanes. They call him the Gray Man. Within weeks of 9/11, letters laced with anthrax kill 5 innocent people. After 7 years, the FBI's hunt for the murderer takes a troubling turn. And a woman tries to run drug dealers out of her neighborhood. Will she pay the ultimate price for her defiance? Our team is standing by. Perhaps you can help solve one of our cases. I'm Dennis Farina, and this is Unsolved Mysteries. Join us. Two boys out fishing on Taylor Bayou find evidence of a tragedy.
What's that right there? That looks like a ball. Guys, it's a skull!
It is the skull of a young girl. 6 weeks later, police discover the rest of her bones, along with the remains of another young woman. Dental records identify the girls as 14-year-old Rhonda Renee Johnson and 15-year-old Sharon Shaw. Both have been missing since the previous summer. 5 months after their bones are found, police arrest 23-year-old Michael Self, a gas station attendant with below-average intelligence. He's convicted on 2 counts of murder and sent to prison for life with no chance of parole.
I did not kill Sharon Shaw and Renee Johnson. It was just all behind politics and wanting a conviction. That was it. Just somebody to play the patsy.
What the jury never heard was that the 2 police officers may have used intimidation and violence to force a confession out of Michael Self. In a surprising twist, these same 2 police officers turned out to be criminals themselves. Rhonda Johnson and Sharon Shaw were last seen in Galveston, Texas, 20 miles south of Webster.
No, that's okay. We've just got a couple more blocks to go.
When they were reported missing, police immediately launched their investigation. The pressure to find the girls was intensified by the fact that Rhonda was the granddaughter of a well-known Webster City councilman. Once the remains of the girls were found, the pressure turned towards finding the killer. Several months after the remains were found, the local city council hired a new police chief, Don Morris, and an assistant chief, Tommy Deal.
Son, I'm glad you're with us. I know I can count on you.
Yes, sir.
Within 3 weeks of taking office, Morris and Deal would get a tip on a suspect in the double murder.
Seems to me a few years back, a boy named Michael
Glenn
Self
Price, another city councilman, suggested they investigate known sex offenders and mentioned Michael Self's name. Michael had been arrested twice in Peeping Tom
You do a
incidents.
good job, Tommy. All right, give it a whirl, Glenn. Bye.
Following the tip, Deal called Michael Self, who agreed to meet him at the police station for questioning.
Detective Haynes.
I knew I hadn't done anything. I just went ahead and agreed to meet him there.
Now, Mike, I want you to answer some questions for me. I want you to tell us if you've ever seen either one of these girls before.
Michael said that he did recognize the girls, but did not know them.
Renee Johnson. And
To his surprise, he was immediately
Sharon Shaw.
arrested.
That's right. Cuffing. Sit down in that chair. All right.
When Michael was being questioned, another police officer, Jerry Mitchell, stopped by to observe. He says that Michael was not at all nervous at that stage of the interrogation.
Mike looked relaxed, easygoing, kind of laid back. He's grinning. And I don't know that it ever really sunk into, at that time, what he was being involved in.
Like I say, I ain't done nothing. I ain't broke no law. Don't you need to be on patrol?
Mitchell left the room. According to Michael, Chief Morris then took charge of the interrogation, and the tone changed radically.
What, is he innocent? You innocent, Michael? Yes, sir. Tell you what, Tom, why don't you go home and take a nap and let me...
What you are about to see is based on Michael's recollection.
Yeah, Michael.
Don Morris started asking me questions, why I killed these girls. I told him I didn't know what he was talking about. He said that he wanted a confession. I wasn't going to leave until he got one.
Tell me about the girls.
I don't know nothing about no girls. I done told you.
I think I'll go round up some stray dogs.
Hey, you be careful out there.
He said, don't you have a guilty conscience? And I'd tell him that I didn't know what he was talking about. He had me against the wall. My hands are behind my back. And he's poking this nightstick in my stomach and said he was going to get a confession. You tell it. He was more or less a madman about it.
You getting tired of this, Michael? Yeah. I'm pretty tired of it myself.
I was crying. I was upset. He took his gun, opens the cylinder, and takes 5 bullets and stands them on end where I can see them.
I want you to tell me where you picked them up. I want you to tell me.
I was more scared than I was anything. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what to say.
Because I will blow your head off.
No! You don't.
Tell me about the girls.
You don't.
He closed it. He spun the chamber, and he points his gun like this and says he's gonna blow my brains out if I don't sign a confession.
Okay.
Now, I want you to write down everything you remember about that day.
He had already beaten him half to death, poked him in the stomach, and I could see that he meant what he said. And I asked him, what do you want me to sign? He tells me that he'll tell me what to write.
You were drinking beer while you were riding around. Isn't that the way it happened?
Yes, sir.
Less than 1 hour after Jerry Mitchell had left the room, he returned. Michael was now visibly upset.
Let me see what you wrote down. Let me see.
He was, in my opinion, kind of being led in the sequence of events of how they wanted it written. I'd seen about half a page of writing on there by the time it was all over with, and I think they had to rewrite that one. Something wasn't right in it.
True. Now let's start again.
I do know that they rewrote the confession several times.
But Michael's confession did not fit the known facts of the crime. For example, the confession said that Michael dumped the bodies at a place called El Largo, 20 miles from where the bodies were actually found. And there were several more discrepancies.
There's the statement in here that what he did was, in essence, he choked one of the 2 girls. There was no evidence of the breaking of some very tender bones in the neck that necessarily would have been damaged if in fact, he had choked one of the girls to death. There is this claim that he went to Sharon Shaw's house. Well, Sharon Shaw's family contradicts that, so she wasn't home that day. That didn't occur.
I had statements from 2 girls signed by their parents as a witness that they talked to Sharon Shaw and Renee Johnson in Galveston between 8 and 9 o'clock. There's no conceivable way that Sharon Shaw and Renee Johnson could have got another ride and been in Webster riding around with Michael Lloyd self at the time that they've gotten his confession.
Next, Michael Self is sent to prison, even though another man confesses to the murders.
Tell me about the girls.
In Webster, Texas, Michael Self, a gas station attendant with below normal intelligence, says that he was coerced into confessing to 2 murders that he did not commit. 3 days after his arrest, he ignored his original attorney's advice and agreed to take a lie detector test.
Do you know who caused the death of the 2 girls?
Yes.
In the course of giving him the polygraph exam, they say, well, now we've got this statement that you gave last Friday where you confessed to killing these 2 girls. Is it true? And he says, yeah. And the lie detector says, no, it's not. It's not true at all.
Yes, sir.
Michael says that after taking the polygraph, he was still so afraid of Chief Morris that he agreed to sign a second confession. It contained a new version of the deaths of Rhonda and Sharon. In his first confession, Michael said he struck Sharon with his fist and left the girls' bodies in a culvert. In the second, he claimed that he hit Sharon with a Coke bottle and dumped their bodies in the bayou. The second confession also says that Michael stripped the murdered girls of their clothing and tossed it along the highway. In fact, their clothing was found with the remains along with unidentified car keys and a crucifix worn by Sharon.
There was a slight difference in the 2 written confessions, but all I had to do was offer in evidence the confession I wanted to go with. And if the facts, the outlined facts, tended to support the elements of this confession, that's all I needed if the jury believed it.
While Michael awaited trial, he was visited by Dave Coburn, who had become chief of police in nearby Cleveland, Texas.
He pulled out his gun.
Yes.
Open it up. Started pulling out 5 bullets, one at a time.
When he made that statement to me, I knew what had come down because a year prior, I witnessed Don Morris taking 1 shell out of his revolver, hiding it, placing 5 shells in front of a prisoner, and playing Russian roulette with that prisoner, threatening him. And there's no doubt in my mind that he did that to Michael Lloyd Self. And when it came to the trial, I was prepared to go in and make statements, and I was never caught.
I don't know whether he did the Russian roulette number. Bottom line, all 3 confessions are consistent. I killed the girls.
Michael Self was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. 3 years later, the town of Webster was shocked when Chief Don Morris and Officer Tommy Deal were arrested for bank robbery. Not only were they members of a criminal gang, but they had been holding up banks during the period that they were questioning Michael. Both were sent to prison. Jerry Bernberg petitioned the court and got Michael a new trial. Just 9 days before it was set to begin, the defense got what looked like a gift from heaven.
It's been bugging me for a long time. I just wanted to get it off my chest. It was Sharon Shaw and Renee Johnson. I'm the one that killed them.
A man told state prosecutor Douglas O'Brien that he, not Michael Self, murdered the girls.
What'd you do with their bodies after you killed them? I basically got the impression from him that what he wanted to do was to get it off his chest and confess to the fact that he killed the girls, but at the same time not give information which would allow prosecution of him.
I tied him up with this black cord, and I tied him up, and I put him in the water.
The statement by this individual indicated that he had tied their feet with black cord, something Michael Self had never mentioned, not found in any statement by Michael Self. That was the secret fact that the police had held back all these years. This guy knew it.
That guy was out of his gourd. He was, I don't know why he came forward. I think he was unbalanced.
I don't remember exactly what I did, all right? I don't remember exactly.
The individual was clearly a very troubled person. with some flights to psychosis. But he knew the girls. He lived in the same apartment complex with one of them. And the most important thing of all, he knew about the black cord.
Despite the surprise confession and the dubious credibility of Don Morris and Tommy Deal, Michael's conviction was upheld.
They have no corroborating evidence whatsoever. Nothing to tie him to any murders or to even being seen with these girls except this, which is not worth the paper it's wrote on.
If he were tried today, naturally some of these areas would be clarified, these particular points we're talking about. We go back and spend more time and send better investigators out and make our decision as to whether to prosecute or not.
Michael Self was never released from prison. The U.S. Supreme Court refused to consider his request for a new trial, and he was repeatedly denied parole. He died of cancer while behind bars. He was just 53 years old. Next, the search for the terrorist who killed 5 people with anthrax. Trenton, New Jersey. Tuesday, October 16th, 2001. Norma Wallace reports for work at the post office. Norma isn't feeling well and thinks that it might be the flu. But as the day wears on, she becomes more and more sick. She can barely breathe. 200 miles away in Washington, D.C., another postal worker, Leroy Richmond, suffers from nearly identical symptoms. He too becomes extremely ill. Both Norma and Leroy are hospitalized, their conditions growing worse by the hour. They seem to be slowly suffocating to death, and doctors can't figure out why. But after conducting a series of tests, they finally come up with a diagnosis: anthrax poisoning. Like millions of other Americans, Leroy and Norma were aware that anthrax had killed a man in Florida just days earlier. And now they were suffering from the most deadly form of the disease, fatal 95% of the time. Who would commit such a crime, and why? Someone somewhere in the world had access to the deadly bacterium that causes anthrax. They had the knowledge to work with it and a location suitable for its handling. Was it a single person or was it a group? Where were they located and what were their motives? For a nation that was still reeling from the 9/11 terrorist attacks, it seemed nearly impossible to comprehend. The anthrax terror plot came to light on October 5th, 2001, in Boca Raton, Florida. 63-year-old Robert Stevens, a photo editor for the Sun newspaper, died after he was exposed to anthrax spores. Experts believe they came from a letter that was opened, but the letter was thrown away, its origins unknown.
We don't have a crime scene in the traditional sense. We don't have witnesses, and we really don't have anyone that we can call an informant at this point.
That same week in Manhattan, NBC News and the New York Post received anthrax-tainted letters.
It is clear that the terrorists responsible for these attacks intended to use this anthrax as a weapon.
But this time, there was a clue. Postmarks on the envelopes from Trenton, New Jersey. FBI agents checked every mailbox in town for traces of anthrax. They found none. October 9th, 2001, Washington, D.C. 2 more letters laced with anthrax. Once again, they were postmarked Trenton, New Jersey. This time, politicians were the targets. Senators Tom Daschle and Patrick Leahy at their offices. The letters contained a form of anthrax so pure and concentrated, It was termed weapons grade.
It was dangerous stuff. It was estimated that 2 trillion spores went into each of those envelopes, which would have been 2 grams. One envelope may have had 100 million lethal doses.
Under the right conditions, just 2 grams of anthrax could potentially wipe out 1/3 of the U.S. population. Notes that came in the envelopes were so similar in handwriting, they had to come from the same source. Did references to 9/11, death to Israel, and Allah is great point to Arab terrorists, or to someone who wanted investigators to think Arab extremists were involved?
We are looking at 3 broad areas. The first being international terrorists, domestic terrorism. We're looking at some of the individuals within the United States, and then we're looking at the lone wolf as well.
By October 20th, postal worker Norma Wallace was fighting for her life. Her temperature had soared to above 100. She was in shock. The anthrax spores were releasing a lethal toxin, causing blood vessels to break and the bacteria to pulse through her bloodstream.
I felt like I was dying. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Once the spores enter your lungs, they actually attack the tissues and the lymph nodes and causes the anthrax to actually take possession of your body.
Leroy Richmond was also critical. He was in excruciating pain as his lungs filled with fluid. Doctors knew their most powerful drugs were rarely effective in fighting anthrax.
I think I was about as near death then as I ever was going to get. My breathing had become so shallow that I was actually panting like a dog would breathe. And I heard a couple guys say, man, he's not going to last but a couple hours, and that'll be it for him.
But how did 2 mail sorters at 2 different post offices become infected in the first place? The sheer speed of 30,000 envelopes per hour flying through a mail sorter could send millions of anthrax spores into the air. Routine maintenance using air blowers only increased the chance of infection.
I looked up and saw this dust and this soot and stuff coming out of the machine. And I just looked up and said, oh my God. And I said like that, and probably in that instance, I may have inhaled the spores.
Miraculously, Norma and Leroy survived their harrowing ordeals. But 4 other anthrax victims weren't so lucky, bringing the death toll to 5. In Washington, D.C., Leroy's co-workers, Thomas Morris and Joseph Kursine. In New York City, hospital worker Kathy Noon. 3 weeks later, Ottilie Lundgren in Derby, Connecticut. In May 2002, the genetic fingerprints of the anthrax spores revealed that they came from one of the military's top secret research labs. Perhaps the anthrax was stolen, but maybe the attacks were actually committed by someone who worked with anthrax spores at one of these facilities.
Loading these letters with anthrax required specific expertise. In other words, it couldn't be done in your basement or your garage unless you had some specific equipment. We are in the middle of an exhaustive national, international investigation. We've interviewed over 5,000 people already. We've issued well in excess of 1,300 subpoenas. And every little piece of the puzzle helps.
Update. On July 27, 2008, a government scientist named Bruce Ivins was rushed to a Maryland hospital suffering from a massive overdose of prescription drugs. He died 2 days later. Shortly after, the FBI announced that Dr. Ivins had been the prime suspect in the anthrax terror of 2001. One of the country's leading anthrax researchers, Dr. Ivins had helped investigate the attacks that killed 5 Americans and terrorized the nation. But Ivins eventually became a suspect himself, and according to the FBI, There is no doubt that he was the Anthrax killer. This case is officially closed, though a motive for Dr. Ivan's alleged crimes has not been established. Next, a couple says that a friendly ghost saved their home from Hurricane Hugo. Pawleys Island, South Carolina, late summer 1822. According to legend, a wealthy young planter rode with his servant along the dunes of a deserted beach. His destination was his fiancee's plantation. The wedding was just a few days away. By the time he could be pulled out of the marsh, it was too late. The young man was dead. At the plantation, the bride-to-be heard the tragic news.
Rachel,
Yes, Papa?
it's James. He was riding and he fell in the marsh. He died in the fall.
According to legend, the girl often wandered the shores alone in mourning. One day she noticed a shadowy figure standing on the beach. That night, her fiancé came to her in a dream and whispered an urgent warning.
Flee the island. The wind is coming. The wind.
She and her parents left the next day, just before a hurricane slammed into the island. The girl, her family, and even their plantation were spared. They call him the Gray Man, and over the years, the ghostly figure has been seen many times. Some say that whenever he appears, the homes of those who have seen him are spared from destruction. Is this just a fairy tale, or is it evidence that ghosts really do exist? You see for yourself.
Through the years, there have been numbers of different stories, often in the newspaper after a storm. And in 1954, a man who lived in Georgetown but had a summer home at Pawleys Island saw the Gray Man before Hurricane Hazel. His home was so protected that beach towels that they had left hanging on the railing of the porch were still there after the storm. Well, I was here in Hurricane Hazel, so it's very hard for me to believe that beach towels could have remained on that railing and not have been blown away, but they did.
Hurricane Hazel had left the southern Atlantic coast in ruins. 95 people were killed, and over 1,800 homes were destroyed. For the next 35 years, the killer winds stayed clear of Pawleys Island, and the Gray Man came to be regarded by locals as their own guardian angel.
When he appears to you, you're very blessed and fortunate. Your house will be saved. And so I think it's strange how people seem to have a sense of fear about ghosts, and yet the Gray Man is a benign and kindly person who helps people when he comes and appears to them.
September 1989. After ravaging the Caribbean, Hurricane Hugo slammed into South Carolina. Its winds reached speeds of more than 135 miles per hour. Thousands were forced to leave from their homes. In South Carolina alone, there was close to $5 billion worth of damage. Over 9,000 homes were destroyed. Pawleys Island was especially hard hit.
It practically destroyed Pawleys Island. It destroyed 14 houses in our section. Ours was left standing. As we went in, I was so happy to find everything just like I had left it. The papers that we had on the counter were still there, even though the front door had blown open. There was no evidence of any water or anything inside, and the house was intact.
Even the little pictures and things were still on the refrigerator. They weren't even blown off.
Jim and Claire recalled a haunting encounter that occurred 2 days before Hugo struck.
We were taking a walk late in the afternoon, which we usually do. And you see so many people walking on the beach at this time of the day. That particular afternoon, we only saw the one. And he was coming directly toward us. When I got within speaking distance, I decided, well, you always speak to people, whether you know them or not. So I raised my hand to say hi, or beautiful evening, or beautiful night, or whatever. And he disappeared.
Where'd he go?
I don't know how to explain it, because an eerie thing like that, you know. But of course, I didn't worry too much about it, because I said, well, I was just seeing things. But I'm sure that he was there, and when I started to speak, he wasn't there, so.
I didn't know it was a gray man. I just thought it was someone on the beach until he disappeared. I can't explain our good fortune except through the presence of the gray man and the Lord, of course, who may have used the gray man.
I can't think of any way that you could rationalize the saving of our house, except it had to be a miracle. I never did believe too much in ghosts. I have changed my outlook. I believe there are ghosts. After seeing a ghost, you gotta believe it, you know.
Next, the mysterious case of two friends who vanished without a trace is finally solved. And drug dealers take revenge on a woman who tries to run them out of her neighborhood. Previously, we told you about Bill Rundle and Tracy Kenley, two friends who went for a drive near Hastings, Nebraska, and then seemed to vanish into thin air. That afternoon, they had visited Tracy's parents, 38 miles from Hastings.
What do you do, Bill?
We never talked about where they were going when they left or what they were going to do. I guess we felt that she'd make it home safe.
Around 11 p.m., Tracy called her boyfriend and made plans to meet him at a local bar at 12:30. She never showed up. Neither she nor Bill were ever heard from again. Using cell phone records and transmission signals, police pinpointed Tracy's location at the time of the call. It was a junction 16 miles east of Hastings, but a 30-square-mile search of the area turned up nothing. Police began to wonder if Bill and Tracy had run away together.
They didn't run away. I feel that in my heart, because neither one of them took their toothbrush, neither one took their any change of clothing.
There's been no evidence as far as their credit cards, ATMs, phones have ever been powered up from the day they disappeared. No evidence has led us in that direction that they're still out there.
Another theory was that they had met with foul play.
Nebraska is an area where you travel through to get from the east or the west. There's always a possibility of somebody coming through the area that may have been a more severe criminal than we're normally used to.
We need some kind of clue. We have no clue. There has been nothing. It's just like they just disappeared.
Update. 2 years after Tracy and Bill vanished, drought conditions lowered the level of a pond near the road where they were driving. A farm worker noticed the outline of a car in the pond and contacted police. Tracy and Bill's bodies were found inside. Police theorized that they got lost, and when they tried to turn around on the narrow road, Bill's Jeep went into the pond. Investigators have ruled out foul play. The city of East Palo Alto, California was a nice working-class town. But then drug traffickers moved in. Fed up, a resident named C.W. Roddy took a stand against the criminals. It almost cost C.W. her life.
police. My mother's been shot. Do you know who shot her? I don't know. We were in the house. Somebody deliberately did this.
Late on New Year's Eve, paramedics and police responded to a 911 call. A 60-year-old woman had been shot in the stomach. Unknown gunmen had fired 35 rounds of ammunition into her house and car. The victim was C.W. Rowdy, a retired phone company employee who had lived in the area with her son Darnell for 23 years. The attack was the culmination of a 3-year campaign of terror against C.W. by a group of young drug dealers. Their customers were often affluent residents from the surrounding communities.
The drug dealing on our street was very much like a drive-up bank window. They drive up, the dope dealers will rush to the car in a total frenzy of competition with one another, trying to get the sale. And it continued like that, day and night.
C.W. decided it was time to take action. The first confrontation came when teenage drug dealers parked their cars in front of her house.
Excuse me. Young man, do you have any business with me here?
Lady, you just take care of little business. We'll be here. Okay? Come on, man. Don't wax your wheelchair.
If you don't have business with me, I'd really like you to move your car.
Lady, I'm not moving.
I will be taking your license number and giving it to the police.
C.W. frequently reported the young traffickers, but the understaffed local police could not handle the enormous problem.
I've always felt that your home is your castle, and what you do in your home is your business. But when they bring their drugs out in front of my house, in the streets, that makes it my business. And I don't do that kind of business.
On another occasion, C.W. was physically threatened.
What's up, old bag? We're gonna blow your damn house up. See what I'm saying?
And I said to him, are you gonna make sure that I'm in it? And I looked up and saw a police officer sitting directly across the street.
Yeah, you better watch your back. Straight up.
Officer, did you hear what the young man said to me? He threatened to blow up my house.
Do you wish to make a citizen's arrest?
Yes, I do.
You do wish to make a
I
citizen's
do
arrest?
wish to.
So we did. And he took him off, but he was back within a matter of minutes.
Things only got worse over the next 18 months. During certain hours of the day, the streets resembled a rush hour traffic jam. In their off hours, the dealers used C.W.'s front curb as their personal parking lot.
My car, you see me park it there, gonna act stupid.
I would like to have it moved.
Why don't you move my car? Let somebody else move their car. Get out of here.
And then the confrontation suddenly turned violent.
He picked up a piece of wood, and I was infuriated. And I said to myself, this is stupid. So I started back across the street, and they started saying, yeah, go call the police. After getting to the police station, the boy was on his way back home before I even finished with the police report.
You guys are gonna pay for this.
2 months later, C.W. was involved in another confrontation. Chris Thomas, a new neighbor, was attacked when he came to her defense.
They cut him very badly in the face. They had to take him to the hospital and get stitches. And someone called the police.
Police arrested the young man who had attacked the neighbor. For the next 10 days, things were quiet until New Year's Eve.
On New Year's Eve in East Palo Alto, for some strange reason, a lot of citizens like to shoot guns. They just shoot up in the air.
At midnight, C.W. was awakened by the gunfire.
I heard all of the shooting. And I looked up at the clock and I said, oh, they're just celebrating New Year's Eve, right? So I got up. And then I went in the living room. I noticed across the street 3 young men. They were just standing around talking, and there weren't any cars coming up and down the street at that particular time. I would say about 20 minutes after midnight, it had all quieted down. All of a sudden, I heard all these shots.
I hit the floor at that time. I was about to get up, and I heard my mother scream in pain.
CW was shot in the stomach. Her son immediately called for help.
I think the attack on my house was a planned attack, and they were planning to kill us.
My mother's been shot.
The police arrived within minutes. They recovered shell casings from 3 weapons: a .38 caliber revolver, a .380 semi-automatic pistol, and an assault weapon, possibly an Uzi. The police did their initial investigations and then called in the FBI.
We know that there were 3 to 4 individuals who were responsible for firing these rounds into the home of Mrs. Rowdy. This is a neighborhood that has been somewhat paralyzed because of the amount of violence that has been generated from those who took a stance to come forward and say, no more.
To date, no suspects have been identified. But even though the case remains unsolved, the attack has rallied the neighborhood. A group of mothers took charge of the local park and drove out the drug dealers. They were successful, but they know it is only the first step on a long road.
I went by a couple of Saturdays ago and just observed the children out there playing, and it was such a beautiful sight, and it made me feel so good. It brought tears to my eyes. So it's looking better. It didn't all happen in one day, and I don't expect it all to change in one day, but I do see the beginning of a change, and the future looks bright, and I am hopeful.
Neighborhood residents are still hoping CW's attackers can be brought to justice. If you have any information, please log on to our website at unsolved.com.